Chase Bank's no doc business lending program was a real thing, but unfortunately, it was also real brief. As if the Chase Bank credit reporting glitch wasn't enough, Chase Bank has decided to end its initiative of no doc business lending at the time of this recording. I'm going to give you some context on what that lending program actually was versus what you may have saw on social media. I'm going to give you some context to why Chase Bank rolled it out in the first place, who they were targeting, and then I'm going to give you some additional context on why that's ended and what Chase Bank's new standards are at the time of this recording for business lending. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to actually give you an alternative for those of you who may have a relationship with Chase Bank, how you can still get access to some capital. So stick around to the end to find out about that. So Chase Bank's no doc business lending program was essentially targeted and then launched under the premise that Chase Bank wanted to gain market share when interest rates started to rise, and many of the competitive low-scale lenders that were existing that were offering these different types of programs were starting to go under or have a difficult time continuing their programs. Chase Bank saw this as an opportunity to capitalize. There was blood in the streets, and Chase Bank thought, hey, it's a great time for us to go out and grab some market share. So this program was initiated with the concept in mind that there were under lenders out in the marketplace that were gobbling up a bunch of, new or established businesses that may not have the best lending criteria or lendability, but were still viable businesses that, Chase Bank was, normally would shut out on their lending program. So this initiative, and I'm telling you this from internal data from colleagues that I have that are relationship managers for Chase Bank. So this is not just coming off of something that you can Google. I'm telling you this is firsthand information coming from relationship managers that work at Chase Bank that are business lending specialists. So they made it abundantly clear to me at the time of the program launching, which many don't know was really about September of 2023, September, October, somewhere in the fall of 2023, that Chase Bank internally made it clear that they were launching this program as an attempt to expand their market share with those business entities that they're normally not able to reach with their lending programs. They knew that a lot of banks and lenders that were, smaller and more local, or whatever the case may be, brokers, were in a tight position with interest rates having been up at that time for over a year. What were the details of this lending program? So essentially this no doc business lending program was a $250,000 exposure limit for Chase Bank. So what that basically means is they were willing to take applications without documentation up to $250,000 in exposure for clients that met a certain criteria. So that criteria was ideally still about a year in business, credit scores of about 680 and up, and of course, an internal established banking relationship ideally. So this was going to be targeted to a pretty specific criteria of business owners, but still a broader range of business owners that they don't normally get access to. Chase Bank is known to be one of the most strict lenders in any capacity, but especially with business lending. So this particular program was up to $250,000 in exposure, meaning that you could apply for any broad range of business lending products, but you could not exceed $250,000 in exposure and still qualify for that no doc, low doc business program. So basically, if you got a $50,000 credit card and we're going for $151,000 on a line of credit for a business, that would trigger you to have to provide documentation at that point in time. Inversely or conversely, if you had 3 business credit cards for $50,000 a piece and we're going for a line of credit at $99,000, you are still within range of that $250 limit exposure and could possibly get approved for that line of credit without documentation or with minimal documentation. So you needed about a year in business. You needed about a 680 plus credit score. You did need some revenues. You did need to have an existing business banking relationship with Chase Bank to qualify, up to $250,000. So on paper, this program looked really good, all things considered. Chase Bank is very difficult normally. So this was a new layer of exposure that they had brought on, to the masses to allow business owners and entrepreneurs an opportunity to get access from capital from one of the top banks in the country. That having been said, this program was pretty short-lived. As I said, it was rolled out in the fall of 2023, and I'm recording this in March of 2025, and it's over just like that. The economic scene has changed greatly, and maybe also in that year or so that it was available, year and 4 or 5 months, maybe Chase Bank did gain a reasonable amount of market share and gobble up some, businesses, some viable businesses that met that criteria and felt satiated enough to end the program. I don't know if it was the pressure from the economic system or the fact that they met, what they were looking to accomplish, or a combination of such. Chase has put out no official statements on ending this initiative, but they have for sure ended this initiative. I did verify this with some colleagues, again, relationship managers that I know directly in the space that work for Chase Bank. So if that's the case, what's Chase Bank's current criteria? Who are they looking to lend to if they're no longer comfortable with that 250 exposure limit, with new smaller businesses that are under the 2-year threshold and didn't meet other strict criteria like collateral, etc., didn't have extensive financial statements? Chase Bank's current criteria, according to my colleagues and relationship managers that are in the field with them, is now back to a 2-year minimum in business time frame. They are still very much looking for existing business banking relationships. So that means it will be much more difficult for you to get funding if you're not banking with them. And they are also looking for regular sets of documentation, financials. So they're looking for at least 1 year's tax returns. They're potentially looking for financial statements, cash flow statements, balance sheets. They're back to looking for at least 1 to 2 years of these financial documents that they had pretty much pushed to the side, or at least were willing to take your application on the onset. And then maybe based on your information that they looked in on your banking relationship, your credit profile, and then from that point in time in the business that you were in, then they might require certain levels of documentation under the No Doc program. Now they're looking for that upfront for the most part. They're pretty much looking for continued personal guarantees, of course, on anybody that has 10% or more exposure in the business, or 25% more exposure in the business and ownership. Looking for at least a year's tax returns. Looking for those other financial documents that for some people are a complete nuisance when you're in the early phases of your business. So Chase Bank's criteria, that 2-year threshold, is a hard stop. And if you want to verify this, you can get in touch with your relationship manager that may be in your local area at a branch, or working amongst branches in your area. They will probably be willing to take your application potentially, but I can tell you right now, if they're transparent, they will tell you 2 years is a hard stop right now for Chase Bank, regardless of the industry that you're in, regardless if you bank with them or not. They can't discourage you from applying, but they can basically give you a heads up that you probably have little to no shot. So you're basically back to a full underwriting process with Chase Bank for business lending. So again, I think this is reflective of the economic cycle that we're in, the circumstances that we're in. Chase Bank is also known to be really conservative with its core customer base. So if you don't have 6 figures in income, revenue, or balances and haven't had it for an extensive amount of time, Chase Bank has just been really difficult to deal with for years. This is the norm. Everybody pretty much knows this. They're back to functioning on that capacity. They were opening themselves up for a higher risk exposure and, kind of lowering their standards or lowering their criteria to access their financial resources and lending products and their capital. But at the end of the day, they're kind of back to business as usual now. And I'm sure that it is at least in part due to the uncertainty in the economic system, the fact that rates are staying higher for a longer period of time. Businesses are starting to default more. Debt is just starting to rise for a lot of people. And again, you have to remember, Chase Bank just went into its glitch issue at the time of this recording, just a few weeks ago, where it leaked business credit card usage on consumer credit reports of personal guarantors. So Chase Bank is just functioning really odd. They're functioning really, really skittish at the moment. And I can be certain to let you know right now, they'll be very difficult to do business with if you're not already in the perfect, or at least a certain criteria within their book of business. If you're not banking with them already, you don't have a certain credit score, if you're not established, you haven't been established for a period of time, I can tell you right now it's going to be very difficult. I literally have talked to RMs, relationship managers, that have made it clear that they've had a hard time getting clients with nearly $1 million in revenue, 800 plus credit scores, but are less than 2 years in business, are in the wrong industry. They have a hard time getting them approved. Again, $1 million plus in revenue, 5-6 figures in balances internally, 800 plus FICO scores, and they're still having a hard time getting these people approved. That's the type of environment it is within Chase Bank for lending. So I promised you a little bit of a caveat or at least a back door to where you can still get access to funding with Chase Bank if you are under that 2-year threshold. So that access point is going to be business credit cards. Now, what you saw on the internet, many of you may have seen on the internet, like the Instagram posts, etc., even some YouTube videos. A lot of people were marketing no docs with Chase Bank, etc., 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 and they've been doing so for years, to be honest. In most cases, they were talking about business credit cards. You can still get approved for a business credit card with Chase Bank with little to no documentation. And you can do this brand new with Chase Bank if you have the personal financials and your business is set up properly. So what does that look like? 680, 700 plus credit scores, ideally, a good personal stated income, and making sure that you have a legitimate setup business. They're going to lean very heavily on your personal financials for this, but they are going to be looking for you to have, a legitimate business, good industry, and a good, address, basic information that checks out when they run a background check and verifications. If you get through that threshold, you can get a business credit card with Chase Bank. It may not be the limits that you may have been able to get a couple years back before the environment around us got where it is, but that is a great way for you to still get approval. Now, before you may think that that's the end of it, with their business credit cards, they actually offer a My Chase loan feature on their credit cards. This is a consumer and business credit card feature where you can actually take a loan out based on off of your credit limit with no credit pull or no documentation. It's just based off the usage of your card and how you and the relationship you have with them. You do have to have the card for a period of time, maybe up to a year, been using it really well, etc. But you can pull a fixed rate installment loan off of your business credit card. So this is a nice feature if you already have a business credit card but can't meet the additional criteria to get regular funding from them, like a line of credit or other installment loans from them. You don't have collateral, you don't have the documentation, you haven't been with them for 2 years, but you have a good business credit card history with them that has a decent enough size limit. You've had it for maybe a year or longer, and you still could use some fixed rate capital, non-credit card type APRs, variable high credit card rates. You can get a fixed rate loan through Chase Bank with the business credit card. It's available on business and consumer credit cards. It's kind of a borderline invitation only type of thing, but it is available on their credit cards. It's something you can check into or at least call in about and see. If you don't see it already in your app, you may be able to call them up and see if there's something available or what you may need to do to see if you can become available for it. It's called My Chase Loan. It is available. It is a way for you to get access to some fixed rate, lower debt capital, lower cost capital rather, on your business credit card with Chase Bank or possibly your consumer credit card. So that's just a little bit of a backdoor hack for you guys that may not be familiar and still want non-credit card type of capital from Chase Bank. So just to pull it all together, Chase Bank's pivoted. They're not offering a no doc program any longer. That's actually been as of, from my understanding, potentially as of late last year. I'm saying this, I said earlier in the video that this is really something that has been put out there now in March. But from the RMs that I've talked to, this is really something that's been going on since late last year. So really the program really only lasted about a year, to be honest. So they've pivoted. The no doc 150, 250 range that you've seen marketed, you may have been sold on Instagram, YouTube, whatever the case may be, is no longer in existence. It was a 250 to be clear. It was 250,000 exposure limit. That's out of the window. Business credit cards are going to be your only way in with no documentation or low documentation early on in that relationship, leaning very heavily on your personal financials and the business being set up on a base level, appropriately. So that's the latest news on Chase Bank with the business lending program. I know that a lot of this has been very important for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs looking to get capital. Chase Bank is irritating and borderline pompous as they are, and as much as they seem to be only for those who have great assets already, they were kind of dipping their toe in the water towards more of the Main Street working class, individuals and business owners, but they seem to have reeled that back at the moment. And so right now, the likelihood is you're going to have to get back to focusing on those, mom and pop banks, credit unions, regional banks. They've kind of been a bread and butter anyway. But, the big banks obviously have some nice financial resources. They have nice capital tools and lending tools available. So it's nice when they open the door up to the Main Street business owner, the Main Street entrepreneur. That was your opportunity with Chase Bank. Unfortunately, that window was closed. Comment down below and let me know if you are aware of this program at all with Chase Bank. Did you participate with it? Were the details that I laid out different than what you heard? Comment down below and let me know if you've got excess capital with Chase Bank. Do you have business credit cards? Do you have a line of credit with them? What was it like getting approved for those products? Comment down below and let us know. This is JP from Blueprint for Prosperity Network, helping you to master relationship banking and maximize your borrowing capacity so you can customize your blueprint for prosperity. To all my pioneers, welcome back. To my new viewers, welcome in. I want each and every one of you to like, comment, share, subscribe. There's other ways to support the channel down below. Also, follow me on Instagram. I'm going to put that in the description section. We're branching out slowly but surely on Instagram so we can continue to grow our community of pioneers there as well. Other than that, I want each and every one of you to stay focused, stay in motion. I'll see y'all soon.